Hello, I'm Roger Bisbee and welcome to our podcast number 8. I'm joined here on the bench under the flight path at Gatwick Airport by
Robin Clevitt.
And we're going to talk about, well, let's put it this way. In previous podcasts we've talked about the good things in life, probably becoming self-employed, getting started,
how to get paid.
Number 8, it's time to talk disasters. Shall I kick off?
Why don't you kick off?
Well, as a plumber, probably almost every day is a potential disaster, you know. It's one of those jobs, isn't it? Every plumber I know, everyone says, oh, they call him leaky or something.
Yeah.
You know, so like, we all get leaks, you know. Any plumber who tells you they don't get leaks doesn't do plumbing. I remember going to a block of flats. Now, I'm going to talk about insurance, public liability insurance in a minute, but my public liability insurance covers me for up to 5 stories, 5 dwellings. Now, that's important because if you are on the top floor of a block of 30 flats, something goes badly wrong, that water's only going to go one way, down. So you could end up with a few million quid's worth of damage. So this particular block of flats, they wanted a washing machine fitted, so I went in there, just took the bare minimum up there, as you do, you know, small tool bag. Where's the stopcock? Turn the stopcock off. And just as I touched it, and honestly, I'm going to tell you, I did no more than touch it. Just about turned it, the thing blew off completely. No. It was a soldered joint, which is unusual. A lot of them are compression joints, but this was soldered in to the end of the pipe by a gnat. It couldn't have been a quarter of an inch of
It was waiting
pipe.
For that touch. It was just waiting.
It had been sitting there for 10 years. Bang, it went. So therefore, that's the leak on the live side, isn't it? You know, I can do nothing about it. Well, actually, I could. What I should have done is just got my hammer, flattened the pipe out and dealt with it later, but I went running downstairs, got my turnkey out, turned the stopcock off. Now the only trouble is that in the street outside, for this block of flats, all these stopcocks.
No way. All
the way along in a row. Which one serves that flat? I've got no idea. I turned the lot off, every single flat of every single... So of course then I got people jumping up there, the water's off, you turn the water off. I stopped it pouring down, but by the time I stopped it pouring down, it had already been through maybe 3 flats.
Yeah, blood.
And I didn't know because I couldn't get into them. People at work.
Right,
So then I've got to put a card in everybody's door saying, I'm the plumber who's just flooded your house.
Oh no.
And just wait for them to come home and start ringing me up for the insurance claim. So it wasn't my fault. Really, was it? I mean, I just went in there. So
well, you inherited a problem, didn't you? It's turned into your problem and your disaster.
So I got in touch with an insurance company. So the next thing I get from the freeholder, the guy who holds the lease for all these flats, you know, he said there was nothing wrong with it before you entered the premises. You know, it was working perfectly well. So
he's not going to take your opinion on it now.
Well,
anyway.
Exactly. So you know, he said it's your fault. So you know. I went, hang on a minute. So I got in touch with a consultant engineer friend of mine, photographed the thing, showed him everything, got him to do a report. And I said, no way, I'm not standing up for this one, you know.
Yeah.
But the important thing is, what I learnt then was a very, very important lesson. I've got public liability insurance. First thing is you don't admit liability ever, because even though you might be friendly with a person, you might say, look, it's completely my fault. Under the terms of your insurance, you can't do that. You've got to say, I'm putting this in the hands of my insurance company, and you've got to deal with them, and you know they're sorted out. And I can't say any more about it at this particular stage. Now, the other thing I learned at that time, which is interesting, the householder's insurance takes precedence.
Right.
Now that's very, very important for anybody out there who's got public liability insurance, who's working in other people's homes. I'll give you another scenario. You've done a loft conversion. You haven't gone for a full tin lid. You've just put tarpaulins over the top. You know, nice day. You've gone home. You've put the sheets back over the roof, tied them down, and then that night there's a big storm that blows the sheets up. Rain gets in, floods the house. What do?
What do I do?
Customers screaming. Come on, they're on the phone.
Well, I mean, I can tell you what I would have done years ago, which is before I had knowledge of what happened. So nowadays, as I said before in previous podcasts, I manage people's expectations. I say, we can do your loft with a tin roof, and this will mean it will cost you more money, but the chance of anything going badly wrong because of weather and things outside of our control are a lot less. If they say, no, we don't want to go for a tin roof, I almost get them to admit, that they don't mind a bit of water coming in, because anyone who's done loft conversions are really tricky to get the sheets to completely hold up, especially like the scenario you said, you get a big storm and the rain and all the rest of it. So I think that's a major issue, and if you get the water coming in, straight away it's you're the person who's created that problem. Even though the client, it's their house and you're trying to fix it for them, they've chosen for you to do it like that, it still comes back on you and it looks bad on you, and it's the way you handle that. And like you talk about the insurance, well, I tried to avoid talking to insurance companies as much as possible and deal with things like that myself. So it might be I've got to replace a few ceilings, decorate a bedroom and all the rest of it, which is awful really, because I took the job on to deliver them what they wanted on the assumption that they would take the risk, any risk. But they don't. You see, unless you make that clear to people in the outset, you're the one who inherits the risk.
Their insurance takes precedent.
Right.
If you have any kind of problem in a house, if you're doing a job in somebody's house, if you put a nail through a pipe, whatever you do in that house, storm blows up, or you've just taken a wall out and you've put some OSB up and they have a burglary that night,
right, yeah.
It's not your problem. It's not your problem. Right. This is the first thing you've got to learn.
Then they say, why should we contact our insurance company? We got burgled because you didn't make it secure.
Yeah, or
then you're in an argument.
Or flooded because you didn't put the tarpaulins down enough.
And they owe you money and you can't get into an argument with people.
But the point is that even before you're talking about managing expectations, really speaking, you must say to them, you need to be insured, you need to notify your insurance company you're having building work done, and therefore your insurance company will take a view on it. They may stipulate certain things. They may say, now, we just had, this weekend, Notre Dame.
Yeah, I was going to actually say that, actually.
There is a bit of a history of builders burning buildings down just when they're reaching the final stages of it. It happens, I've had a couple of near misses with a fire. In fact, my grandfather, his house was burnt down by a painter decorator.
What, stripping paint?
Yeah, just he was using the blow lamp on the thing, and you know what it's like, it can catch, and it can be hours and hours and hours before that's smoldered, and then it starts, and so the whole house burnt down.
Well, that particular issue really scares the life out of me, and to the point where I do all of our work now, we avoid as much flame as possible. So all the flat roofing we do is all with hot air, so it's a welded system, for the simple reason it just worries the life out of me. Let's take Notre Dame, and what a terrible, terrible, terrible shame that was when I saw that beautiful timber spire, that ancient spire burning and it going over. It was kind of like heartbreaking for me. It was to a point, but at the same time I thought to myself, I could get out there. No, I'd seriously go out there. If I could go there and work for free to actually assist with the reconstruction of the timber work, maybe I've got
10 years, mate.
Maybe I've got some skills there to offer. But disasters come in all shapes.
If you go to France,
that'd be good, wouldn't it? A siesta. That's Spain. Disasters come in all shapes and sizes, Roger. I mean, what I consider to be a disaster would be, for example, I was 27 years old. This was in 1997. I had a big job on in Roehampton in London. Big extension, and before I went I got it all organised, had the brickies there, had my chippy subcontractor. The last job I asked him to do before I leave was make all the dummy frames up for the windows. Gave him a schedule of the window sizes and the dummy frame sizes. You know where this is going now, don't you?
Go on.
And when I got back and the extension was built ready for the roof, I'd had a 3-week holiday in California. It was fantastic. Got back and I thought, right, I can go and do this roof, and it all looked pucker. The brickies had finished. It was my father-in-law who had built it, so it was perfect, and I came inside, looked around, thought this was great, and I thought, why is that lintel so big over that window there, over the kitchen window? We had a lintel with a bearing of about 600mm either side, and I'd specified the lintels, and I always allow 150 either end, standard sort of stuff, and I looked and I thought, oh well, I don't know. Anyway, the windows arrived that week as well. I'd got the roof on, the windows arrived, and when we went to get the kitchen window, I measured it and it was 2800. That's what size it should have been, and that's the size it was delivered, 2800. And the opening was 2080.
Oh, blimey.
All the guy did was looked at the list and he'd read it as 2080, not 2800. A simple mistake, which for me, at that stage in my career, was an absolute disaster. I've been on holiday, self-employed, you don't earn any money when you're on holiday. You come back and one of these beautiful aluminium windows with a hardwood frame, which was all made, so it was probably 1,500 quid worth of a window. and the opening was in the kitchen looking out of the garden. So not only it was face brickwork on the outside, beautiful reveals, red brick arch over the top on a special lintel with pistol bricks. It was like all of these things. I was like, oh my God. But I just had an absolutely wonderful client there, and when I came clean and I said, you know, it could have been a disaster to them, I said, look, this is what's happened. Simple error, simple mistake. What would you like me to do? I can adjust all of the brickwork, I can take it all down, shore the roof up. He was such a nice guy, the client. He said to me, well, it is a human error and we're all human, all the rest of it. He said, well, we just need to get a window that's the right size. I can live with the opening. It was a bit big anyway. We can get more wall units on the kitchen now.
You're jammy.
No, but it was just the fact that I came clean, I suppose, and maybe there's a message there about if you do see a job going disastrously wrong before the clients, you've got to come clean and say, I've underpriced this drastically, I can't deliver it the quality I want. Talk to them when you can, sort of thing. And I was lucky in that respect.
Yeah,
but
you work for some very reasonable people.
He even offered to pay half towards the window, because I'd offered to cover the cost of the window. He said, look, I'll pay half towards it. And that was just a real beautiful thing to happen. So yeah, I mean, that is a disaster, and to me that was a major disaster. It made me feel terribly upset, and it made me feel I was shaking, you know. I was sort
What's the moral of that story?
The moral of the story is write the numbers bigger. Instead of me writing a little list out, make it a bit more legible. Maybe it was my writing which wasn't legible enough. And I didn't go back to the chippy and shout and scream at him, because, you know, I wasn't even there to check it. So it was. I
think the moral of that story is don't go on 3-week holidays to California. You deserve everything you get, mate. I think
it was pre-children, so it was a great opportunity to go driving around. And do you know what? That was an interesting thing. Driving around. I'm going off tangent, but it's quite interesting. Driving around then, no sat nav, no mobile phone. What an amazing trip.
Yeah.
But so going back to disasters, looking at Notre Dame, it's absolutely awful. Is the builder the guy there who's going to be responsible for that?
Well,
is it the insurance company?
Okay, first of all, you've got to put a regime in place, yeah?
Yeah.
Now, you know, we've had enough of these. We've had it with the Macintosh Art School in Glasgow, you know, the Windsor Chapel.
Castle.
There's all these things. So at some point, people have to say, right, what have you got in the way of fire precautions? What are you doing? A few smoke alarms might help. Come on, you know, seriously, anything, you know. There's loads and loads of things you can do, which obviously they'd be thinking about now for next time.
Yeah.
But I think we can all learn from that. I've got a very strict policy on my use of a blow lamp as a plumber. I'm supposed to stay in the building for half an hour after using the blow lamp to observe it. So I say to people, right, well, I've done the little job, now I've fixed your leak, and I've got to spend another half hour drinking tea and watching that just to make sure the house doesn't catch fire.
Yeah. I like it.
So, you know, that's a fact. So they've got to pay me for that time, but that's the stipulation of the insurance policy, as is a fire extinguisher on the job, not sitting in my van, you know, I must say, and all those kind of things. But, you know, I've been lucky, touch wood, in that respect. But as I say, this the important principle that all tradesmen ought to know is that the householder has to have their insurance in place. So your public liability insurance will be expecting them to be insured against fire, flood, blah, 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 you know, burglary and all the rest of it. Now, if for some reason their insurance company thinks you've been negligent, and there's a difference between negligence and unlucky,
or accidental, or
exactly that. You know, if you just had an accident, or the storm's blown up and you couldn't foresee it and it blew the tarpaulins off, not your fault. So their insurance company should pay up, and if they don't pay up, it's up to them to argue with your public liability insurance company, not for you. So at that point, as unfortunate as it is, because you want to help the customer out, you may even be friends with the customer, you've got to say, honestly, I'd love to help, but I can't do anything in this situation. It's between your insurance company and their insurance company. But it's absolutely vital that when you go to do that work, they understand that it's their insurance company that is going to pay. Yeah, because so far, again, touch wood, I've never had a payout on my public liability insurance because in most cases it's been proved that, you know, it's covered under the normal thing. I will just say one more, funny enough. I didn't get a claim on a public liability insurance, but in this case I was doing an oil boiler in a farmhouse. They hadn't had central heating before, so I fitted the central heating in the house. Farmer, you know, used to a hard life, and first time they're ever going to have this, the wife is looking forward to it. So I fitted the oil boiler, got a new oil tank outside, which I also installed. That's all ready. I'm just piping up the oil to the boiler. and they need a fire valve. I haven't got the fire valve that you're supposed to have, obviously to cut the oil supply off if there's a fire. So down to the merchants to get the fire valve. While I was down at the merchants, I met another plumber mate of mine. He said, couldn't come and give me a lift up with a boiler, could you, a wall-hung boiler? So I said, yeah, okay, I'll come around that way, and it was a few miles out my way, but I went round, helped him out, had a cup of tea with him, piece of cake, all the rest of it. It was probably 2 hours before I got back to the farmhouse. Walked in the back door of the farmhouse, and as I walked in the back door into the kitchen, my foot went into a squelch of heating oil.
Oh no.
The whole of the kitchen was flooded in heating oil.
Oh no.
Now,
That is
I'd
deadly
installed the tank. The tank was empty. Nothing was going on there. This farmer, in his haste, he'd gone, right, the tank's full. Let's get the oil ordered. The guy had come round, delivered the oil. The valves were turned off on the oil tank, but he turned them on to check the gauge, and he left them on. My pipe was through to the kitchen, sitting there without the fire valve on, open-ended. That tank was emptying for 2 hours into that kitchen, filling it up with oil. At that point, who do I blame? Do I blame the tanker driver? He's running a mile.
Did you know he was coming?
No.
Oh, well, then
I knew
there's
nothing about. Yeah, but you say that. Oh, yeah. Well, there you are. You see, problem for me is that was owned by the Surrey County Council. That house, that farmer's, he was a tenant farmer. They were the client, really. They were putting it in, and I had a very, very good contract with them. I had years of work from them, and I thought, what do I do in this situation? And if I'd argued with the householder and everything else, and it was his fault and it wasn't, and it was the tanker driver's fault and it wasn't, and it was my fault ultimately because I didn't pinch the end of that pipe off. Or cap it off in some way. And as I walked out, I thought about it, and I thought, should I cap that off? Because it's almost an unwritten law. You don't leave open pipes like that. And I said to him, look, I'm going to do my best to clean this. It stank, honestly. You would not have lived in it. You would have moved out. Anyway, I cleared the oil up, spent about 2 or 3 days in there scrubbing and rubbing, using all kinds of potions and lotions and try and but it still smelt of heating oil as soon as you walked in there. So I said to the farmer, what do you want to do? What are we going to do about this? And he said to me, well, is there a bit of compensation? And I said, well, a few years ago. And I said, what do you think about 300 quid? And he went, yeah, that's all right. 300 quid.
That's still a lot of money for you to find then.
I was away with it, mate. I was happy. I would have paid him 5, actually.
Yeah.
And I thought, just to walk away from it, give him 300 quid, the guy's going to get used to it. I mean, quite honestly, his house smelt of cow manure anyway, so it was only a different smell.
It's the best of two evils, So can I tell you about my earliest disaster? I was an apprentice chippy. I was doing a loft conversion, because it was always loft conversions I was doing. And I used to work 7 days a week because I'd earn an extra bit of money, and it was a Sunday afternoon, and I was it was like a little terraced house in South London, and we'd put steel at the front, steel at the back, and we were hanging joists in between the steel. So I was on my own, so it was a matter of trying to cobble the timbers up through the loft hatch, nail the hangers on before the days of positive placement nailers and all that. Nail the hangers on, it was all lagging, and I had to set the joists between the existing joists just off of the lave and plaster ceiling, to keep the headroom and all the rest of it, the norm. And I was working away, and I'd fixed one end and I'd gone to the other end, and I was getting hold of the hanger, trying to get a nail into it, and it just literally slid down and touched the insulation. I didn't think anything more of it until I saw this beautiful, beautiful haze of dust and light all coming through. It was just like this, like angels are rising up from the insulation. And I was like, what's going on here? And what had happened was the old lave and plaster ceiling, as we were working on it for the previous week, just sort of walking across the joist, and I had no experience of how fragile these things were, and it had gone this little tiny, like a domino, that little knock on that lave there, it just let everything go, and I didn't even hear it because there was a big double bed underneath, and it just gone straight down E1 on the bed. But so I thought, where's this light coming from? So I climbed down through the loft hatch. It's a Sunday afternoon, there was no one in the house. Barely, I couldn't open the bedroom door because of the plaster all over the floor. Sort of gently started pushing it open. All of this dust is bellowing out of the open fanlight window. Literally, it was just like you've never seen sort of devastation like it. That thick, black, silty
Well, we've all
London
taken a few
dust.
ceilings down, haven't we?
And I was like, I couldn't believe it. And I did exactly the same thing. I just started bagging and clearing and vacuuming, and I must have spent about 2 or 3 hours there clearing up. But for me, at the time, it was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I did it. It was a Sunday. It was my responsibility. Someone else wouldn't have done it. My boss is going to be unhappy with me. The client's going to go mad. I'm going to lose my job. It was a disaster. It was kind of like, and that gave me a feeling, I suppose, from an early age of being very risk averse and very wary about.
So what? Tell us. Did your boss sack you?
He didn't, but he made me obviously tack it all and not pay for the plastering. But I think he was a good guy. He was a good guy, but equally,
Very harsh, I say. Customer?
They were okay.
I think that's interesting because obviously, people's reaction to the problem is one thing. Like they say, it's not what happens to you in life; it's how you react to it.
Yeah.
How you deal with it. So that's how they dealt with it. But I would have said, and I've had exactly the same problem. In fact, we had a ceiling let go once, came straight down through the stairwell, and nearly killed the baby in the pram. The baby was in the pram, and the mother picked it up because it was crying. 5 minutes later, the whole ceiling came down through the thing. It would have done, horrendous. So what I learnt from that is you always prop lath and plaster ceilings when you're doing loft conversion. So in other words, scaffold board through.
Great tip.
Couple of acros in there.
Great tip.
Because if they start flexing, they will go.
Because those old ceiling joists are only designed for ceiling load and not foot traffic. And when you decide to work up there and load them out with stuff...
But it's the nature of lath and plaster as well, isn't it? The way that it's letting go. And funnily enough, I've got a really good tip for that. I'm going to do it as a skill builder video. Go in the loft, vacuum the whole loft out, get rid of all the loft insulation. It's very important that you do a really good vacuuming job of the loft.
Yep.
Dilute PVA over the whole lot.
And it bonds it all back together, does it?
Wash it in there. Just
a great
chuck it in with a bucket and say to the customer, look, it's a little extra we're going to do because those ceilings are old. They will let go at some point, and by doing that, you just flood it with wet.
Like 50-50?
I go for even 5 to 1 because you just get soaked into all that lath, and honestly, it knits it up. You would not believe how well it works. So,
that's a good tip.
Yeah, so it's one of those things. If anybody's got a ceiling which is, they see a few cracks in it, think, I'm not sure whether that's there. That's one way of it's not as good as overboarding it, but it certainly does help. But even then, I'd still prop it. Stop any flexing until you get those joists in, especially a fat bloke.
I know. I mean, in the construction industry, it's one of the most dangerous industries there is in the world. In fact, more people die in construction than in any other industry. It's even more dangerous than jobs like firefighters. This is a fact. You can Google it. It's more dangerous than firefighters, and that's why we have to be so careful. And going back to your comments about the heat on sites, the rules are, I think it's at least an hour now before you're knocking off. It's an hour for any heat. And naked flame, you've got to have a license and a certificate, and you've got to notify when you've been doing it and what you've been doing. So you've got to keep a record of that. So from learnt mistakes, I think that the industry is going in the right direction from a health and safety point of view and a disaster risk management point of view. Anyway,
do you know what? It's interesting because when you're talking about that hour, I haven't checked my public liability insurance. I mean, I renew the premium every year. They send me a little thing, I shove it in the drawer, but I haven't actually read up to see what changes have been made on that insurance policy over the years. So that would be something for me to look at straight away.
It's an interesting point.
They'd probably say you're over 65, we wouldn't even insure you. You can't work anymore or something. But
and although I think public liability is a big connection to disasters in building and all the rest of it. And indeed, in the last podcast number 7, there was a comment about we talked about how to find a good builder, and someone came back to us and said, "Oh, you need to check if they got public liability." And I did answer that comment to say, "Well, that's a good point, but actually, it's the easiest insurance money can buy. You can phone up. It's cheap. They are the matrix." And I've worked in the insurance industry, in the construction industry for several years. I know quite a lot about it, and it's a simple matrix. And if there's no real due diligence involved at the level of the domestic builder. There's no real due diligence involved from a brokerage point of view. So it's not a very good qualification. It's important that they can table it, that they can say, I am insured.
The thing that surprised me is that in all the years that I've been at work, nobody's ever asked me for it. Nobody's, I've taken on quite big jobs in people's houses, and at no point have they said to me, have you got public liability insurance? Can we see the certificate or anything like that? They've just assumed that you have it. Of course, when it goes wrong, that's the point where you think, what is their insurance? So for a householder listening to this, good idea to ask your builder about their insurance. Good idea to ask your insurance about
notification,
how that works. So I think that's for everybody, because let's face it, if it happens like my grandfather, where your house is burnt down and you find the painter and decorator isn't insured, and your insurance company isn't too happy, then you're left with no house, basically.
And I think it's really impressive if you're a small trader or a builder or even a construction firm, when you put in your tender. If it's a tender, they'll ask you for it anyway. But if it's an estimate to a private client, it looks really good that you put that in, and also you put, here's a copy of our public liability insurance, because not a lot of other people might have done that. And that might just make them feel that you're a little bit more responsible, for example. So the groundworks company that helped me here, doing all of our complex piling and everything else, when they gave me their documentation, I had risk assessments galore for every single exercise they did, from mixing cement to putting in rebar, and it was a standard thing that they put. Their insurance was in there, and it was beautifully presented, and I thought, now this is a professional firm.
One of the things that because I've been involved in quite a lot of underground water main replacements and all kinds of things like that, drains and so on, is when you start digging down, you could chop through somebody's fibre optics and bring a whole blooming office block down, and cost an absolute fortune in lost revenue, lost work. So when you start digging around in the street, the public liability insurance goes way up from what it used to be. And when I used to get away with £1 million cover on it, I don't think now that they would entertain anything less than 5 million quid, But again, the stipulations I've got is that I mustn't work in buildings over 5 million. I mustn't do this, I mustn't do that. So they are tightening that bit by bit.
But disasters, as I say, we'd really love to hear about your disasters or experiences if you're a client. Yes. I think sometimes by sharing experiences about things that go wrong, you can learn something, or you can think, I'm in this situation, it's going that way, what do I do about it? And
that's the important thing, is if you hear of other people's disasters, at some point you're going to be in a similar situation. Go, remember what that bloke said about this, or what happened to him, and hopefully you avoid it. And as I said, the Notre Dame thing is a case in point, because the next person's having a cathedral restored is going to go, do you know what's the fire policy like?
Or can we have a sprinkler system fitted for the construction work, or so managing risk. And also, let's take Crossrail for example, which is an ongoing disaster in my opinion.
Is it? Why?
It's an ongoing disaster from the sense that it's going to be, 3 times over budget and twice over time, and I know that they say in construction that all jobs go way over budget and way over time, and there's lots of reasons for that, which is a disaster to me, because I think that you should be able to set your stall out and get it somewhere near where you want to end.
I don't agree.
But that's a disaster.
No, I don't think so.
Why?
I think what they've done in Crossrail, well, it's a massive project. You imagine you're going under London, at some points they were that close to the tube line, that machine, and they can manoeuvre that within millimetres.
Okay, so they can do that, but yet they can't run it on time and on budget.
Well, no, because Robin, that is somebody said, now you've done a job, right? Nobody's ever done Crossrail before, right? So best will in the world, people are sitting down. Now, I've got to say
So what gave them the right to put a budget against it? What gave them the right if they didn't know what they were doing?
Because if you look at Isambard, Kingdom, Brunel, you look at all those jobs, the Rotherhithe Tunnel, all of them, 100 and odd men died in the Rotherhithe Tunnel. These jobs do run over, they are disastrous, things do fall down. And that is the nature of construction. That's been going on for thousands of years like that, that people, and if you look at the building of the stately homes in Britain, a lot of those homes that people built, multi-millionaires, bankrupted them.
Yeah.
They actually never lived to see the house complete, or never lived in it, because they'd lost all their fortune because it's a vanity project or whatever. Yeah. So you can look at anything you like, Taj Mahal, pyramids, they all ran over, they all,
Were you around when they were doing the pyramids?
Slave labour they used there, and they still didn't manage to make any money on the pyramids. But no, honestly, I think Crossrail is an absolute fantastic achievement. Technically a fantastic achievement. Yeah. The fact it's gone over budget and over time, I don't think is wrong or unusual. I think given what they were up against, and given the level of engineering that's gone in there and management.
No, I'm not taking away from the technology and the actual goal or the end game.
We'll be so proud of
but it's like everything, even the the Millennium Dome. That was another financial disaster. I know it's a fantastic venue now to go to.
I think it was a bit of a white elephant. Myself, I think the Millennium Dome, it's a tent, I don't think it was ever. Right, so the first thing about the Millennium Dome is they took that piece of land on, contaminated, massively contaminated. It was an old gasworks. They had to dig down and remove all that, and they were almost suckered into it. You know, the people who bought that plot to do that were just mugs, because the liability that they took on in cleaning that plot before they could even use it was enormous. So look across the water to the Olympics. The great thing about the Olympics, okay, that may have run a little bit over time, I don't know, but they managed to open it on time, and everyone would say, we'll never do it, it'd be rubbish, we'd be terrible, you know, and actually it was a complete triumph. Nobody died.
Yeah.
Nobody died. Now, when people talk about us and they compare our output to the rest of Europe, and they say, oh, Britain's the least productive country in Europe. We have the most onerous and stringent health and safety rules of anybody. And when you look at them, when you look at something like Crossrail, and you look at those guys going into those tunnels, guys and girls going into those tunnels, and the amount of health and safety they have to go through just to go in there and do that job, and the kit they have to wear every
well, I
day.
think that's absolutely commendable. And,
it is, but it also costs money and slows the job down. Therefore, that's the job, that's the price you pay.
I'm probably looking at it from a bit of a simplistic point of view, in terms of, if someone gets a contract to do something like that and they put their hand on their heart, they say, we'll deliver this in 24 months and it's going to cost £16 billion. And then you're telling me, quite rightly, that it's amazing what they do. The technology, the tunnels, and they're weaving in and out of foundations and pilings and all the rest of it, and avoiding everything. And I do think that's commendable. But why did they not think it was good? Why did they think it was only going to cost X amount of money and take this long? I mean, do they just pick a figure out of the sky? And why don't they just say it's going to take 10 years and cost 100 billion and deliver it in 5 for 50? You know, manage expectations. It's what I'm all about.
The whole basis upon which these things are done is flawed anyway. I worked for the Surrey County Council then. I was contracting, and she was saying, oh, we want the best estimate. And nobody talked about best value then. You know, they were always cheapest. Now, a lot of the time, people would take jobs on they could possibly do for that money, but all they were hoping to do is get their
extras.
Variations, but also get their snout in the trough, and then they could start milking it, you know, along the way. So I think it's the nature of the game. Okay, you go in on a quote. Everybody that's ever been involved in any kind of civil engineering project, you know, these are big jobs, aren't they? Is going to know that it's best guess. That's all it is. It's a finger in the wind. You can't be that good. You've done a few loft conversions, so if you go into price of loft conversions, you've got all that experience to look at. If I said to you, dig a tunnel under London, you'd be sitting there for a few years talking to a few experts before you got anywhere near it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I'd sooner be asked to do a garden bridge, because you can get paid millions and not actually deliver anything. I don't want to get political or anything like that. I'm really not a politicalised person. Is that a word, politicalised?
Yeah.
Is it?
Can be anything you like.
It is now. It's a Robin Clevitt word. But no, I just think the disasters need to be avoided, whether they are financial, whether they are, God forbid, someone gets injured, so whatever it takes to try and avoid those disasters, I think people need to just take a step back sometimes and think, what are the risks? Do a risk assessment, even if it's one in your head, and especially when you're telling people to do stuff. Don't tell anyone to do something which is dangerous, or you don't know how dangerous it is.
If mankind is going to progress, if society is going to move forward, we have to take on the unknown. We have to be brave. I mean, we look at people like Sir Peter Bazalgette with the London sewers, you know, that whole thing, and then the building of a London Underground, with the way they did that, you know, which a lot of it was hand dug, you know.
Oh, yeah.
These are tremendously ambitious projects, you know. They didn't get them right first time. There were disasters along the way, things collapsed, things didn't work, you know. We've had that with software in the NHS, where they've spent millions and millions of pounds on a bit of computer software that didn't work, you know. Abandon it in the end. I think that, I'm not saying that's a good thing, but I'm saying that all the time you're going out into the unknown, aren't you? And you know, if you're going to say, let's try and manage expectations, let's try and manage risk, let's try not to go over budget over time, we get nothing done. People have to be brave enough to get to the other end of it and think, do you know what we got out of this? What we got out of this was amazing. It was worth it. And Crossrail and the new London sewer that they're doing, you know, another fantastic job.
That's a load of crap, though, the sewer.
Let's not forget, Robin, that, you know, you're doing a building project here. Is that going to come in on budget?
I didn't have a budget, really.
Ah, there you are. You let yourself off. Come on.
So, no, when I say I didn't have a budget, obviously I had round numbers for everything. And my way of going about it is piecemeal, try to go through the stages and try to do it to the best of my ability. It might be taking a bit of time for me to deliver this particular house for myself, but I need to go and earn some money as well. So I'm sort of managing my own risk, not borrowing too much money and, earning a bit and doing a bit sort of thing. The same as most of us guys and girls out there who are trying to make our houses nice,
People will tell you it takes longer than you thought. I mean, I wouldn't call those disasters. I would call that just part of life. You say to people, guess what? It took longer than we thought it was going to take, and it costs more money. Hey, that's building for you, But a builder I know, and this I was actually in the house, funnily enough, the day before it fell down. And you think houses don't fall down. This house fell down almost on the stroke of midnight. People thought it was a bomb going off. The guys have been in there, they've taken every internal wall out. So there was just the outside. The whole building was racking, and it was built of sandstone. It wasn't built of bricks or anything, so it was like a pile of marbles. Then they're hacking the rendering off. The whole thing just collapsed in one go on the stroke of midnight, South the Road in Reigate. People can look it up. And as I say, I was in there talking to the guys the previous day, builders, friends of mine, and and that guy's insurance, funnily enough, paid out because he didn't just have public liability insurance. He had a very wonderful thing called all risks insurance. And
that's a completely different beast.
Pays out on anything, anytime, anywhere, which is fantastic. So they got a new house built. And nobody died. That was the thing, because it collapsed at midnight. But the guys were saying, "Blimey, we were in there." We would have been in there the next day, so they were lucky. Really.
Absolutely.
And now he probably faced a prosecution from the HSE just on the basis of putting people at risk. I think. We're becoming risk averse, aren't we, as a society? We don't want to take those risks, and I think. Certainly when you look at people on site, what's the ultimate that can happen? The ultimate bad thing that can happen is
somebody gets killed.
Somebody dies on your site. And I've been on a site where that's happened, and it's no fun. It's
you just got to remember there's too many variables to be sure about anything in life, especially in building and construction and that sort of stuff. Too many variables. The weather, clients, lack of materials, lack of manpower. It's just endless.
Anyway,
it's going to be disasters, whether you like it or not.
So everyone listening out there, let us know what your disasters are. Let's see if you can come up with some
corkers,
better stories, some corkers. Let's all learn from each other's experiences.
And no offence to anyone who's been working on Crossrail, I do actually think it's going to be fabulous. I go to London once or twice a year, and so that means that if you'll be finished in 6 years, about 6 trips time, I'll be able to take a ride on Crossrail.
East-west.
East-west? No, I'm not going to east.
You don't go north, you go north-south.
I go to West End and stay there.
It's designed to help us in Essex. It's for the Essex people.
To go that far? We've had a few comments, so if you've already commented and said about a few topics, they're on the list. We kind of want to prioritise and sort of make sure that we go in the right direction. But equally, if anything happens, a bit like Notre Dame, we could probably do something about that. I mean, this was going to cover a little bit of Notre Dame as well. But disasters.
How are we going to cover Notre Dame?
Well, we talked about Notre Dame and the disaster of the fire.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were saying we were going to go and fix it. I thought you were just lining
and Roger
me up
was
there.
telling me he knew who was behind it. Well, he said he had a hunch anyway. Sorry.
That's good.